In this video, I'm going to compare the notion of justification as it applies to beliefs to some other notions. So we're going to get into that so we don't get confused about what justification is. So let's compare, as Connie and Feldman do, justification of a belief to blameworthiness. And so one thing to note is that we can't control the beliefs that we have. We sort of just open our eyes to the world sometimes and we come to believe things about it. We hear things, we see things, we taste things. And so even in cases of inference, we often don't have the choice to believe or not. Beliefs just come into us. Maybe that's not always true, but largely our beliefs are involuntary. And so you might think, based on that, look, we can't be blameworthy for having those beliefs. You can't blame me for the beliefs I have because I didn't have any control over it. It wasn't voluntary. That's a natural line of reasoning that I think many people think is plausible. Now, Connie and Feldman are interested in this further step, which says, then it looks like it doesn't make sense to call beliefs justified or unjustified. After all, I couldn't help it. I couldn't change what I did. I just I had to have the beliefs I did. It wasn't voluntary, and therefore it doesn't make sense to blame me for them or praise me for them. And likewise, it wouldn't make sense, we might think, to call beliefs justified or unjustified. Now, Connie and Feldman reply to this idea by distinguishing between justification and blame. They say that whether beliefs are justified doesn't depend on our being in control. Now, it is the case that they think blame depends on our being in control, but whether we're justified or not, it doesn't matter if it was voluntary, whether we form the belief. We're just evaluating the status of the belief itself. And so they think beliefs can be unjustified without the believer being blameworthy. So I could have beliefs that I'm not justified in holding, even if I'm not blameworthy for it, because I didn't have any control. I didn't have any way to stop having those beliefs. So that's one thing we want to keep separate, at least if we think Connie and Feldman are right, that this idea of justified beliefs not being exactly the same as the concept of being blameworthy for having a belief. Here's another distinction I think we should draw that they mention between epistemic and other kinds of justification. So consider the following example. I offer you $1 million to believe that the earth is flat. And then we ask, well, are you justified in believing the earth is flat? And I think when you ask students this question, they sort of waffle on it. Some of them say no, some of them say yes. And I think there's a sense in which, yes, you are justified. And then there's a sense in which, no, you're not justified. And so here's how we might cash that out, the words we use in philosophy. We might say that you are not epistemically justified in believing it, but you are prudentially justified in believing it. That is, it's not justified in epistemic terms, in terms having to do with knowledge, justification, reason, things like that, evidence. But it is justified, having that belief is justified prudentially. It's most prudent for you. It's what's best for you is to have that. Because you get $1 million, which would be pretty sweet. So I think it's important to keep in mind that we can tease apart these different notions of justification. On the one hand, we have epistemic justification having to do with things like knowledge and evidence. On the other hand, prudential justification might have to do with what's best for us, what's prudent. And there might be other notions. So Connie and Feldman mentioned moral justification. We might talk about legal justification or even aesthetic justification based on what's beautiful or what makes good art, something like that. So the lesson, I think in general, is that though it might be that a belief is prudentially justified on the basis of things other than evidence, for instance, my getting $1 million if I have it, this doesn't mean it's epistemically justified based on things other than evidence. So they try to defend their view by saying that evidence really is what is important to epistemic justification. Now we're going to see, and as you've heard Goldman challenge that, and we will see that. But Goldman and Connie and Feldman are all trying to get at this epistemic notion of justification, not this wider notion of prudential or moral or legal or anything else like that. And so that's what we're going to focus on here, epistemic justification, in our course.